Welcome to the Create a Life That Is Beautiful podcast, your go-to resource for personal development and coaching. I'm your host, Letitia Ringe, and I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm Letitia Ringe, your coach and host, and in today's episode, I am going to share with you exactly how I can support each and every one of you, regardless of where you are in your romantic life right now, to create a long-term, committed, thriving romantic relationship or marriage with a partner that allows both you and your partner to thrive, that allows your relationship to thrive, that allows both of you to be supported in your individual purpose and potential, that allows you both to evolve as well as the relationship, that also turns you on and allows your attraction to continue growing with the relationship, and most importantly, leaves you and your partner satisfied for the long term. This is what I believe most of us want. I don't run into many people who say, actually, that doesn't sound very good. What I do run into is people saying, that sounds like it's unrealistic. I don't know how to create that. So in today's episode, I'm going to tell you exactly how we create that. And I'm also going to give you an opportunity to join me to help you create that. This episode will be really valuable whether you decide to take that next step or not, because one of the most important things we need to do in any area of our life in order to step into what we want is to get clear on what is stopping us from creating what we want. When we know what the real problem is, it means we can solve it. And so that's what I'm going to give you in today's episode. So first of all, I want you to think about the big impact of creating romantic relationships that allow you to thrive, that are with you for the long term, where you and your partner are fully committed to creating a relationship that allows both of you to thrive, where your purpose and potential is supported, where you evolve as individuals as well as within the relationship, where you feel turned on by the relationship rather than turned off or drained, where you feel satisfied and you get to continue exploring your attraction to one another because it gets better over time. This is not a selfish desire. This is not only going to impact you. When you create this kind of relationship, when you dedicate and devote your time and attention to learning how to create this, you impact and support not only yourself, not only your partner, not only love itself, but you also impact all of your other relationships, you impact every other area of your life, and you impact our world in a positive, loving, heart-centered, and meaningful way that is contributing to a better world for all of us, a more peaceful, loving, accepting, and joyful world for all of us. If you look at any problem we have in our world right now on a global scale, there is a relationship issue at its core. We do not know how to communicate. We don't know how to resolve conflict. We don't know how to accept one another, let alone ourselves. We do not know how to create a world that is truly peaceful, loving, and joyful. We don't. And it starts with us as individuals. We must know how to create this within ourselves, and then we must look at our most intimate relationships to see whether we're practicing and embodying these states within those relationships. If your love life is not where you want it to be, if it's not turning you on, if it's not loving and peaceful and secure and satisfying, and if it's not supporting you to thrive as an individual, and if you don't know how to communicate and manage conflict and be able to be seen and accepted as yourself by the most intimate person in your life, then how can we do this out in the world? How can we practice love in action? How can we embody peace? How can we truly accept one another? We're going to continue to have these horrible problems that drag us all down. So this is not something to leave for another day. This is our most important work. And it might feel like one of the hardest because we think that the impact of the work we do in our relationships is selfish. We think that it only affects us or it only affects our partner, but it's not true. It affects everyone. And it's the most urgent and important work that we could do because of the level of consciousness we all have right now, which is the highest it's ever been, and the global problems we have across our world. All of our issues come back to our understanding of relationships and the skills you will need to learn, practice, and develop in order to have a great romantic relationship and love life. So, doing this work impacts you. It impacts your relationship with yourself. You will become a more whole person when you focus on your relationships because it requires you to look at all the blocks you have to the love that you want to experience. It then requires you to look at how that is impacting and showing up in the way that you relate with a partner. This impacts them, of course. And then it impacts your other relationships because you realize those same blocks to love are showing up with your friends, with your family members, with your colleagues and peers, with strangers, with everyone you're interacting with. And then you realize not only are these patterns that block you from love showing up in your love life and all of your other relationships and also in the way that you love and care for yourself, but they're also showing up across all the different areas of your life as a whole. Your health, your relationship to your body, your relationship to your work, your relationship to your hobbies, your relationship to your home. Truly, these patterns show up everywhere. And most importantly, they impact our world as a whole. We cannot get to where we are all deeply desiring to go, which is really just to be accepted for who we are, which is what creates peace. And when we accept others for who they are, that also creates peace within ourselves, being able to be understood, being able to be supported, being able to be free and joyful, and truly being able to show up and come from a place of love rather than fear. That is what creates the world we all want. So it starts with our love life, and that is why this work matters. Welcome to Relate Higher, a podcast dedicated to providing the leading standard in conscious higher relating and to teaching you a conscious framework for all of your relationships. This is your go-to resource for developing meaningful, conscious relationships across your life. I'm your host, award-winning relationship coach and consultant and former family lawyer, Letitia Ringe. I'm so glad you're here. So let's talk about what's the problem. Why are we not creating the kind of love we want to experience? And this is whether you're single or in a relationship right now. It truly doesn't matter which of the 6 phases of the romantic cycle you're in right now. The problem is the same. And you get to solve the problem at no matter what phase of the romantic relationship cycle it is you're in right now. That means if you're healing from a broken heart right now after a relationship has ended, if you're dating, if you're starting a new relationship and in those first 2 years, if you're in a long-term relationship or marriage, if you're deciding whether to leave a relationship right now, or if you're ending a relationship and moving through a divorce, a breakup, or a separation. It does not matter where you're at right now. The problem is the same. No matter what it is you want to be different, or no matter what you wish secretly could be different, but you're too excited to even acknowledge that that's what you want because you think that you're asking for too much. No matter what it is that you wish could be different, the problem is the same. And it's important that you acknowledge those wishes. because those wishes are leading you and a current or future partner to a better place that is better for you, that is better for love, that is better for your relationship together, that is better for all of your other relationships across your life, that is better for your life as a whole, and that is better for our world. So what is the problem? The reason that I created my conscious relationship body of work and that I call it conscious relationship is because the problem is that we are showing up and approaching our relationships unconsciously. I'm actually not talking about something necessarily spiritual here, which is how the term conscious relationship is often used. It's often used as part of the spiritual community, and often it's even tied to the astrology community. But the way that I'm talking about it is much more practical than that. I'm talking about the way we show up in our life and in our relationships, where we let the default part of our brains run the show. When we let our unconscious part of our brain run the show, we're operating from a place that has been automated, from a place that has been enculturated and socialized, and not from a place of intention. It means that whatever we learned as children from our caregivers, our parents, our family, from society, from our teachers, from our friends, like wherever it's come from, we've digested all of those beliefs, emotions, behaviors, and even our skill set simply from whatever we've absorbed as children. And in our little child brain, we then create stories about what love means, about what relationship means. We create coping mechanisms and what I call protective patterns to get needs met that we weren't able to get met as children. And so we use the best strategies we could at that time. Where they become problems is where those strategies actually lead you to disconnecting from people in order to protect yourself. And those strategies are every single time exactly what is standing in the way of what you desire that is not being met. And that's why it feels so hard, because there's a huge unconscious part of you that is protecting you through these strategies that you've been repeating throughout your life. And then there's this other huge and growing part of you that wants something to be different. And these protective strategies, protective patterns are blocking those desires from being met. And it feels impossible to change them because these protective patterns have become so much a part of you. They're automated, habitual, default, they're unconscious. So you can't see outside of them. It's very hard to even spot that you're in these patterns in the first place. And then when it comes to actually changing them, it can feel really difficult because you don't know anything outside of that. When we're not aware of what our protective patterns are that are blocking us from the love and connection we desire, and when we don't know how to move those patterns into connective patterns that actually support connection and lead us to what we want, we never create the long-term thriving, committed relationship and standard of relationship that we desire. And it's as a result of showing up unconsciously. This is what we're doing by default. So in order to move to a conscious approach within your relationships, you have to make an intentional decision to do that. You have to learn, okay, how am I showing up unconsciously? And what other choices do I have? This is what I'm teaching you in this body of work on conscious relationship. And it's also why I've called this segment of the podcast Relate Higher. Relate higher is a verb that you can use to remind yourself that in every interaction with another human being, including yourself, you have a choice. Do I go at it unconsciously without any intention, which usually means moving from a place of fear and also without awareness? Or do I stop? Do I pause and do I ask myself, what do I want to create here, and move from a place of intention, from a place of love and from a place of awareness? That is what it means to be conscious. Okay, so it's about shifting gears from unconscious, habituated, automated, default, I'm not even thinking about it, patterns into intentional, conscious, love-based, awareness-based approaches to your relationships. Now, our brain does not have the capacity to be conscious of everything, but the way you show up in relationships is the one area I recommend you prioritize using that limited consciousness to approach. Over time, you'll create new intentional patterns that actually lead you to having your desires met and to also creating more love and connection in your relationships. And then they can become new, intentional, unconscious patterns, habits. They can even become your default mode of operating. But it takes work and it takes time. And it really does take working with someone else who is able to help you to spot those patterns that you're unable to see because you're so up close to them and you've been doing them your whole life, and who can help you to unwind them, to show you new ways, to help you step into new patterns, to keep you committed so that you create new habits for yourself and then it's not so difficult. So the problem is that we are unconscious, and the way that shows up is in our protective patterns, which are our behaviors. It also shows up in the way we feel. Like so many of you in your romantic partnerships and love life, you're not even feeling the state of love. You're feeling insecure. You're feeling unsafe. You're feeling dissatisfied. You're feeling resentful and frustrated. These are not the emotions or the states that you want to be moving from. In order to create more love and connection, you need to create love and connection within yourself that lead to loving and connective behaviors. It sounds so simple, but this is a conscious approach to the way we feel. So the emotions that we choose to create impact and motivate the way we show up in relationship. They lead us to choosing more loving and connective behaviors and feeling more loving and connected. In addition, we're also going to feel other emotions that are unpleasant, and we need to know how to process and feel those emotions so that we don't react from them and then show up motivated by those emotions. They just need to be felt and processed. So when it comes to emotions, there's two kinds. There's the emotions that we're experiencing that just need to be felt. And then there's the emotions we want to create so that they can motivate and be the fuel behind the actions that we're creating and showing up with. This is how we start to unpick and unwind our protective patterns, because we learn how to create new ones and we learn how to stop the emotions that are triggering those protective patterns, which is usually about feeling unloved, unworthy, undeserving, unsafe. Now, what impacts our emotions and the emotions we create, and also the emotions that we then fuel that don't serve us, are our beliefs. Our thoughts. We think about 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, and many of those thoughts are the same. We can choose to focus more of our attention on thoughts that actually serve us. Those thoughts are going to be the ones that lead you to feeling your emotions. So let's say I'm feeling unsafe right now, or I'm feeling anxious or afraid. I don't want to ignore that, but I also don't want to start thinking more thoughts that create more of that emotion. I want to feel that emotion. And that is a skill that you can learn how to do when you approach emotions consciously. I also want to look at what emotions do I want to create that support the behaviors I want to show up in. If I want to feel more love, if I want to feel more connection, I need to tell myself beliefs and thoughts that support love and connection. Like, I am loved, I am connected, my partner does love me, I love my partner. But when we're waiting for evidence first to support the thoughts that we choose to think, we then create emotions that have us feeling disconnected and unloved, and that lead us into our protective patterns and do not inspire our partners to give us the love and connection we crave. So we kind of have to reverse engineer the order of things in order to create what we want. But when we're being unconscious, we're simply responding to what we're seeing around us. And then we're letting those circumstances dictate unconsciously the beliefs and thoughts we choose to operate from. So that leads us to not processing and feeling our emotions, to creating emotions and states that lead to more disconnection and also a lack of love, or just generating more fear. And then they lead us to being in behaviors that do not come from a place of love and connection. So guess what we're going to create? We're going to create relationship experiences that continue to perpetuate protective patterns that lead to more disconnection and ultimately lead to you settling and not creating what you want in romantic partnership. Now, this is the way this happens in every other area of life too, but it seems so much harder in a relationship because we have two people reinforcing the same environment. So you're showing up unconsciously, your partner's showing up unconsciously, and you're both looking to each other to be the one to change things. But you are the creator of what you're experiencing. And so you have to start the change process. That's going to inspire your partner to also change. And then once you're both reinforcing a more positive relationship culture that supports love and connection, guess what you're creating? An even more loving and connected relationship. Now, when we show up unconsciously, we also are showing up without skills that are needed to support relationships to thrive. So I call these conscious relationship skills. And what they do is they require you to move from a place of consciousness. I refer to 6 core conscious relationship skills. They are the skill of commitment, the skill of communication, the skill of healthy conflict, the skill of collaboration, the skill of connection, and the skill of consciousness itself. I've done a whole series on each of these 6 skills, and I've even designed a process that you can follow to implement those skills month on month in your relationship so that you can become a practitioner of these skills and know when to use them and develop habits around them. You'll work on these with your partner and you'll do it proactively so that as you're being triggered in your relationship, you don't have to rely on getting to a place of consciousness to utilize these skills. Instead, you're using them ahead of time and becoming well practiced at them. And so in those moments when you're also triggered, you're going to have those skills already in your back pocket that you've been practicing, which will make it so much more likely that you're able to actually use them. And it will help you and your partner to deepen into those skills and become better at using them because you're practicing them month on month. So that's called the conscious relationship. And you can put your name on the wait list for when that program next opens, which will probably be in September of this year. I open it up once a year, and you can join the wait list for that at letitiaringe.com/the conscious relationship. So there we go. The problem that stands in our way of the romantic relationship we want to create and experience is that we're showing up unconsciously and relying on our unconscious beliefs, emotions, behaviors, and skill set to create our relationships. And that leads to creating relationships that don't allow us to thrive, that don't support our purpose and potential, that lead to becoming more disconnected and less attracted and turned on and satisfied by one another over time. And ultimately, it leads to a relationship where you either feel like you're settling or it leads to your relationship separating. The answer is not, okay, I either settle or I separate. The answer is on learning how to consciously approach your relationships. Otherwise, you'll just bring it into the next relationship. And this lack of consciousness impacts not only the relationship you create, but also your relationship with yourself and your life as a whole, because if you're showing up unconsciously in your relationships, you're probably doing it across your life. Those protective patterns impact every area of your life. And also, the way we create change is by showing up and looking at our beliefs, looking at the emotions we're creating and not feeling, and looking at the behaviors we're creating through those beliefs and emotions. It also is about looking intentionally at the skill sets, the new skills we need to develop and deepen in order to create what we want. This requires consciousness. It's that simple. So learning how to do this in your love life will impact your romantic relationship as well as your life as a whole, as well as your relationship with yourself. And then therefore, it also impacts the way you show up in the world and what people are receiving from you in the world. It helps us to elevate our standards. Love in action. In order to show up in love in action, you got to be showing up consciously. You got to have the skill set for that. And you need to know how to work your beliefs, your emotions, and your behaviors to support yourself to show up in that way. So how do we know if this is actually impacting you? I'm going to tell you lots of different examples. And if you see yourself in any of these examples, this is a sign that this is something you need to work on. The first thing I want to do, though, is give you an exercise. This is a question whenever I go to a party, a gathering, or meet someone and they say, well, what is the one thing that you want me to know about relationships? I get them to do this exercise, every single person, and it leads to a powerful realization. So I want you to write down one thing that you want to be different in your love life. Think about either the relationship you're in right now, or if you're not in a relationship, think about either generally, I want to be in a relationship, or you can even think about a past relationship and something you wanted to be different. So answer that question. It doesn't matter what comes up. It could be the smallest little thing, or it could be something huge that you know you absolutely need and it's been on your mind and it takes up a lot of your attention. It really doesn't matter. All paths lead to Rome. Then ask yourself, what is one way that I am blocking that from happening right now? And just let the first answer that comes to you be noticed. Write it down. We actually all do have a faint idea about the way we're responsible for what we're not creating. But we usually don't stop to ask ourselves these questions. What you're doing right now by answering these questions I've just given you is moving from a place of unconsciousness to consciousness. And so this is why in the podcast, I'm always giving you journal prompts, because it allows you to start moving from unconscious to conscious in your understanding of yourself. And this is actually truly the power of coaching. One of the number one skills we have to have as a coach, and this is also true of therapy and other healing modalities, is we need to know how to ask powerful questions. And those questions are asked because they help to elevate your consciousness, which is where all the change lies. Now, what makes coaching different from therapy is that we're focused on helping you to step into the version of yourself that you want to be. We're not getting you to look necessarily just at that first phase of transformation, which is about becoming aware of how you're showing up and what you're doing. We're then asking ourselves, okay, based on what's going on right now in your life and what you're telling me you want, how do we now help you to transform? How do we help you to change? And it's not because there's something wrong with you. It's because you are blocking yourself through being unconscious from what you're actually able to create, from how you're actually able to show up when you're choosing intentionally, which means consciously. So that's what we do as coaches. We help you, yes, get the awareness, but then we help you take it 3 steps further, which is what I talk about in my conscious transformation process, to actually have you being clear on what you want, and then realigning yourself with what you want and becoming the embodiment of that thing. That is transformation. So answer your question. What is one thing you want to be different in your love life, and one way that you block that from happening? Now, I want you to ask yourself, how do you stop yourself from doing that thing? And most importantly, what would be the impact on you and your life if you stop doing that thing? I want you to think about how it shows up in your relationship to self, how it shows up in your love life, how it shows up in your relationships outside of your love life, how it shows up across your life as a whole, and also how it shows up in the way you show up in the world and what you're modeling to the world. As you'll be able to see from doing this exercise, it has a huge impact. And when you ask yourself, how do I stop doing this thing? It's likely your mind has one of two responses. Either it just is completely blank, or it tells you, well, just stop doing that. And the question I have to follow up on that answer is, well, how's that going for you? It's difficult to change things that you've been doing for most of your life. It's difficult to change that on your own, but you can see what the impact is to you of not changing that. Now, we all have many patterns that are blocking us from what we want to be different in our love life. And we suffer in silence. We pretend everything's okay, or this is just normal. This is just how relationships are. And it's simply not true. You don't look at the status quo. Don't look at what everyone else is doing. If you want to be average, which means being in relationships that aren't fulfilling, then do what everybody else is doing, which is not working on it. If you want to be great at anything, look at the people who are being great at it. In any area of life, guess what they're doing? They're approaching that area consciously. They're being intentional. They're showing up and learning the skills that they have that skill gap in. They're being intentional with what they think, the emotions they create, and the way they show up. They are showing up consciously. They're getting support to help them do that. It's the same for your romantic relationships. You want to prioritize this area, and if your relationships are going well, you still want to prioritize this area because that's how you keep them functioning well. That's how you go from good to great. Just like in any other area of life, the people who are at the top of any field are being supported to be there. They're not just relying on what they already know. They're getting support to see their blind spots, to make them more conscious. They're getting support to fill those skill gaps. They're showing up and being intentional about how they're approaching that particular area of their life. We don't get support in relationships when things are going bad. So why would we do it when things are going good? But that's what you've got to change. Don't be average. Be someone who's great at what you do. Put yourself in a position to be great and think about the impact of being great. It not only impacts you, it impacts our world as a whole. It's truly our responsibility. Like, this work is about self-responsibility, and it's our duty to be responsible. So, how do you know that showing up unconsciously in your relationships is what is impacting you and causing problems? I've just given you that one exercise to spot just one little example in your life, and now I'm going to give you some other examples. So if you're craving anything to be different, or you're feeling frustrated, your needs and desires are not being met, you're not feeling satiated, you're feeling resentful, you're feeling like I just want more and I don't have it, whether that's in dating, whether that's the relationship itself, whether that's sex and intimacy, whether it's a skill like communication, whether it's your relationship with yourself, that is a sign that you need to approach your love life consciously. If you're not working on your relationship when it's going well or it's going bad, that's a sign you need this work. If you are telling yourself you just need to go with the flow, if you go with the flow in relationships, then everything should just work out. And if it doesn't, that means you're with the wrong partner. That is a sign you need to approach your relationships consciously. If you're unaware of or don't know how to stop your protective patterns, here are some examples of protective patterns. One, which I love, which shows up so much with the people I work with, because a lot of my clients, they work in the coaching and personal development industry. They have therapy, coaching, healing backgrounds. And so they really believe in manifestation and also doing the mindset work. The protective pattern I often see with these people is something I have called rose-colored glasses. This is where in relationships you kind of dress things up so that they're not a problem because you don't want to attract problems. So you do this to people, you do this to what's happening in the relationship, and it's not so bad. It's great. Everything's amazing. what this leads you to do is to ignore problems, to not accept reality or yourself as it is, and to not see the facts, which means you can't solve them. This shows up for so many of my clients, and it's been so beautiful to do lots of deep work on unwinding this pattern. And part of that is looking at, well, what's the difference then between doing intentional mindset work and consciously manifesting? And then where is that line where I'm putting the rose-colored glasses on and it's actually negatively impacting me? This is some of the deep work we do together, and it creates huge changes in their lives. Another example is micromanaging, not trusting your partner, so you start to try to control them. We do this in very subtle ways and not so subtle ways, and it can lead to lots of relationship conflict and also just feeling like the relationship is a burden and you're not being yourself because you're controlling everything. You're controlling them, you're controlling yourself, you're controlling the process. It's exhausting. And probably what you want is just to be taken care of or to be seen or to just be able to be yourself in a relationship, but you can't because of this micromanaging pattern. Another pattern I call the invisibility cloak. This is where you just don't have any needs. You don't need anything. It's all about your partner. You are kind of invisible in the relationship, and it can lead to people-pleasing tendencies, right? But it can also just lead to you not even being aware of what your needs and desires are. Like if someone asks you what they were, you're like, I don't actually know, because if I have needs and desires, that is actually putting me in a place that isn't safe because I can't trust other people to accept my needs and desires. That's going to make it even more burdensome. We've already got one person with needs and desires. If I throw mine in the mix, this is going to lead to not being in a relationship. That is not sustainable and does not allow you to thrive in relationship, and it doesn't allow you to be fully seen by your partner. So you'll always be craving this. It's like you got a hole inside of you. You just want someone to desperately see you. And maybe you seek this in other relationships, but you're not actually allowing your partner to see you. So you never get that desire met. Another example is all of our attachment styles in the insecure attachment space. So there's anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, and disorganized attachment, which is really anxious avoidant attachment. And what a lot of the research suggests is that those of you who identify with anxious or avoidant attachment are probably actually anxious avoidant, which is what we call disorganized. So if you find yourself resonating with any of the descriptions of insecure attachment styles, we can also look at these as protective patterns. So we can look at the specific behaviors that show up for you. They're your protective patterns. And we can do work to become aware of what they are and how they impact you, how they show up and why they're happening. And the work I do with my clients is to help you begin unwinding those patterns so that you're showing up in more secure ways that actually create the love and connection you desire, rather than keep perpetuating these anxious, fear-based patterns that lead to disconnection and ultimately not to what you want to experience in relationships. Another protective pattern could simply be being defensive. You might get into fight mode where it's like, hey, I'm going to pick a fight with you. What were you talking about? Maybe you experience a lot of anger. That's a protective pattern. And to unwind that, we're going to have a look at what needs are not being met. It's not what you expect. We're going to create new habits. Think about the impact of your life of not being so defensive and angry all the time. Wow, you would be a much nicer partner to be with, I am sure. And you'd be a much nicer partner for yourself too. Another example of a protective pattern could be a lack of vulnerability. It's likely, if you're someone who finds it really difficult to be vulnerable, to be seen, that one of your core desires is to be seen. And so you really, really want it and you just want to feel safe. You just want your partner to do something specific before you really allow yourself to be seen. But actually, you are the block to your own intimacy because you don't allow yourself to be seen. And this can show up with this real desire desire for meaningful connection or for deeper, more connected sex and intimacy, but you never seem to get it met. And it's not because it's your partner's fault, although I'm sure there's some dynamic contributing to this experience. But what you can change is what's happening within you. And it is this lack of vulnerability that you need to work on. And I'm sure it's showing up in your other relationships, it's showing up in your work. And if you can learn to feel more safe in being vulnerable, it will have a profound impact across your life and also your experience of relationship. Another way you know that being unconscious is the problem that is stopping you from creating the experience of relationship you deeply desire is when you notice you have this belief that I just need to find the right partner. I know I certainly had this belief. I was like, hey, if I just get the right partner, everything's going to be all right. It's like if I just find the right job, everything will just be all right. If I just find the right home, the right country, everything will just be all right. But guess what, everyone? It's not, because life is life and there's going to be challenges. It's going to evolve. There are going to be new challenges, new great things as well. But everything's always in flux, just like you are. So anyone who is right will not be right in the same way in the future. What makes a relationship right is having the skills and the consciousness to make it right, to support it, to know how to tend to a relationship. And that's what conscious relationship work and what I'm teaching you gives you. You might also be thinking, I shouldn't need to work on it. Or you might be on the other end of the equation, which is working on it all the time. Have you seen those couples in some of the conscious relationship space? Honestly, people aren't selling it. They're just always focused on the problems. It must be so burdensome. So we're not talking about that either. That is probably a lack of responsibility. There's very little fun. It's not working, is it? Because we're working on it all the time. So there needs to be some level of balance, but it shouldn't be, I shouldn't need to work on it. And it shouldn't be, we got to work on this all the time. Okay? It's somewhere in the middle. You'll also know that this is a problem for you if the relationship is draining you or it's not creating energy. So when you're in a relationship where it is thriving, it's going to create energy that you get to use in the rest of your life. So think about what not having that energy is actually costing you. And obviously, if the relationship is draining you, then it's costing you that energy that is being taken away from you. So not only is it the lack of the energy you could be creating, but it's also the lack of the energy that's actually being drained from you. That is a sign there is a problem here. And the problem is that you're showing up unconsciously, which is great because now we know how to solve it. If you're also experiencing lots of conflict that is really dysregulating your nervous system and is leading to big fights between you and your partner, or if you're experiencing no conflict at all, we know that you've got an issue with healthy conflict. This is not sustainable. It is impossible to have your needs and desires met if there is lots of conflict or if there is no conflict at all. You need to learn how to healthily approach conflict because being a human means that there will be conflict. It's not a problem to have conflict. What is a problem is the way we've been conditioned to see conflict as bad. And so we need to develop a new relationship with it. And if we can healthily face conflict and not make people bad because we're in conflict, can you imagine how much better our world would be? We're meant to have different opinions. This is great. This is how we come up with new solutions, innovative ideas that actually help our world. But we have to learn how to work with conflict in order to reach that. If you're experiencing any relationship fears or anxiety, whether that's in the dating process or after you've left a relationship or leaving a relationship or starting a relationship or just in your relationship now, any fear, stress, anxiety is showing you that there is some conscious relationship work to do there. If you're asking yourself, how do we have better sex or how do we not lose our attraction to each other? How do we feel more meaningfully connected? How do we communicate better? How do we see and accept each other? How do we unconditionally love each other? How do we use our relationship to evolve? How do we support our differences? How do I feel safe, secure, loved, accepted, respected, cherished? All of these are solved through conscious relationship work. So let's talk about what conscious relationship work actually is. Showing up consciously is about showing up with intention. It's about showing up from a place of love, showing up with awareness. And the way that we get there is through looking at the beliefs and thoughts we're choosing to focus our attention on. It's about choosing to process our emotions and to create emotions that support the way we want to show up in our relationship. So if we want to show up as love in action, we need to know how to create a state of love, and we need to know how to create and focus our attention on the thoughts that create that state that lead to those behaviors. We need to know how to transmute our protective patterns into connective patterns so that we're not blocking our desires from being met. And we need to work on those 6 core relationship skills that have us supporting our relationship to thrive. It's like the nourishment that's needed for the garden in order for everything to thrive. That is what these 6 core relationship skills are. So this is my conscious relationship work, and the way that I support my clients to do this work is through my conscious relationship coaching program. In this program, we work together over 3 to 6 months as a minimum, walking you through my 4-phase transformation process to have you get aware of what your protective patterns are, to clarify exactly what it is you deeply need and desire in a relationship in order to thrive. And then we set you up with the conscious relationship skills and connective patterns that are needed to create the relationship you want. And then we do the work to have you realign and embody those conscious relationship skills and new connective patterns that are needed to experience the love and romantic relationship you desire, and also to approach the current phase of the relationship cycle you're in right now consciously. So I help my clients with dating. I help my clients with healing after a separation, divorce, or breakup. I help my clients consciously uncouple and go through a divorce, separation, or a breakup. I help my clients decide whether they want to leave a relationship. I help my clients start a new relationship, and I also help my clients improve and work on a current relationship, because we can always make things better. We do this through my conscious relationship coaching program. You can do it on your own, or you can do it with a partner if you have one. This program is so incredible, and we start off with a discovery call. This is a complimentary call with me, which will have you and I meet and discuss what's happening right now and get clear on exactly what this process would look like for you and your personal circumstances. Because I always create a unique, bespoke coaching program that is just for you. There will be specific conscious relationship skills that you need, and you'll need to learn them in a way that's right for you. There will also be attending to where you are in the relationship cycle right now and helping you position yourself for where you want to go. There will be your unique protective patterns and also your unique connective patterns that you need. And there will also be looking at your relationship with yourself and helping you to really step into the best relationship you can have with yourself too. So the way that that needs to look for a coaching program and process will be dictated by you, and that is my zone of genius. So if you're interested in my conscious relationship coaching program, what we do is we start off with a discovery call together. This call is extremely valuable whether you choose to move forward with the conscious relationship coaching program or not, because it will give you your personal roadmap for what you need to focus your attention on to create the changes that you desire. So at the end of the call, I'll give you a summary of what that process looks like. You'll be able to go away and feel into whether you're ready to commit to the conscious relationship coaching process. If you are, you'll let me know. And if you're not, you'll have that roadmap to work with to help you as you move forward. Now, remember, the impact of doing this work and solving this problem and how it's showing up uniquely for you is that not only do you create a thriving romantic relationship that gets better over time, that allows you and a partner either now or in the future to thrive, that also allows your purpose and potential to be supported, that allows you to grow more attracted to one another and to feel satisfied in your romantic partnership. It also impacts your relationship with yourself, your life as a whole, all your other relationships across your life, and it also impacts our world and the world that we're all wanting to experience and create, which is a more peaceful, loving, understanding, and joyful world for all of us. If you'd love to find out more about this process and talk to me one-to-one, head to letitiaringe.com/CRCP and follow the prompts to submit your application to tell me all about you, and then you and I will jump on a call together. Okay, my beautiful friends, I hope this episode has clarified exactly what the work looks like in order to create the experience of love and romantic relationship you desire, no matter what your issues are and no matter where you're at right now in your love life. I hope it's shown you how important it is to prioritize focusing your attention on this area of your life. And I hope you now have a clear roadmap on what that work looks like generally. And as I mentioned, by jumping on a call with me, we will get clear on what specifically it looks like for you. Please do not shame yourself in any way for needing to do this work. We all need to do it. That's the point, because we don't learn it anywhere else. We don't learn it at school. We don't learn it out in the world. It's something you've got to intentionally go out and seek. And so by listening to this episode, you're already so much further ahead than most people. And I want to celebrate you for that. I would love to go on this journey with you, and I truly love being here to share this information because I know how much it's changed my life, and I'm so excited for you to experience those changes in your life too. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you in our next episode. Thank you for listening to the Create a Life That Is Beautiful podcast, your go-to resource for personal development and coaching. To deepen your learning and practice, make sure you're subscribed to receive our community newsletter. Subscribe at letitiaringe.com/newsletter. And if you haven't yet left a 5-star review for the podcast, we ask that you please do that now so that this podcast can reach other listeners who also want to join us in creating a life that is beautiful.